The Aegis, a sleek reconnaissance cruiser of the Galactic Concord, drifted through the shadowed expanse at the edge of the Orion exclusion zone. Sensors scanned the void methodically, hunting for anything that could breach the fragile peace maintained by the Concord. The void stretched endlessly, but suddenly the instruments picked up an anomaly. Captain Liera Vaughn leaned forward in her command chair, eyes narrowing at the flickering holographic display. The ship's scanners had locked onto a single object, a warship unlike any recorded in the Concord archives. It floated silently, perfectly still against the backdrop of distant stars, a colossal angular behemoth, its matte black hull absorbing light like a void in space. "Scan again," Vaughn ordered. "Cross-check all sensor arrays. What are we looking at?" Lieutenant Ricks, the ship's lead science officer, frowned as he monitored the incoming data. "Impossible, Captain. The readings don't make sense. It's quantum locked. The object doesn't emit any energy, no heat signature, no movement. Even its gravitational field seems frozen, as if it's caught between states of existence." "Quantum locked?" Vaughn echoed. "Explain." Rick shook his head. "It's like a particle caught in a quantum superposition. The ship's mass and energy are phased, neither fully here nor gone. It defies all known physics. Our instruments are struggling to register a single metric accurately." The bridge was silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. An unidentified, unmoving warship of such mysterious design had never been seen before, not since the earliest days of galactic exploration. "Could it be a relic from the old wars?" asked Ensign Keth nervously. "Unlikely," Ricks replied. "No known species had technology capable of true quantum locking. This is something else, something far more advanced." Captain Vaughn's fingers drummed on the console. "Open a comm channel. Attempt contact." Static hissed before a cold, mechanical voice echoed through the bridge speakers. "This is the Nemesis. Do not interfere." The voice was unmistakably human. The room went still. The word echoed in their minds. Human. A species thought extinct for 6 centuries. "Repeat that last transmission," Vaughn said, barely believing what she'd heard. "Nemesis. Do not interfere." The message repeated, this time a bit louder, yet still devoid of any warmth or emotion. The Concord fleet had always considered humans a lost chapter of galactic history, wiped out or vanished after the schism, a mysterious event that fractured humanity's civilization long ago. Yet here it was, a human warship, locked in quantum stasis and issuing a warning. "Status report," Vaughn demanded. Suddenly alarms blared. The Aegis's systems flickered violently. The lights dimmed and surged erratically. The ship's sensors began to fail one by one. "Power fluctuations. Shield generators failing," yelled Engineer Tolvek. "It's like something's draining our energy." Ricks's eyes were wide as he frantically recalibrated instruments. "The ship, Nemesis, is generating a localized quantum field. It's destabilizing our systems. We're blind out here, Captain." Vaughn slammed her fist on the console. "All hands, brace for possible engagement. Raise shields. Prepare countermeasures." But the Nemesis didn't move or fire. It just sat there, its black hull staring down the Aegis like an ancient predator waiting to strike. Then the unthinkable happened. The Nemesis emitted a pulse, a wave of quantum energy that rippled outward, distorting the very fabric of space around it. The Aegis's main sensor array flickered and died. The crew's viewports blurred and darkened. In the eerie silence that followed, the ship's engine systems cut out. The cruiser was dead in the water. Captain Vaughn clenched her jaw. "Status. Systems offline." "We're dead in space," Tolvek shouted. The pulse passed. Slowly, the Aegis's instruments sputtered back to life, but the crew was shaken. They had encountered something that could kill a ship without firing a single shot. "Report to the fleet," Vaughn ordered. "We've found the Nemesis, and it's alive." In the communications hub, a dozen other Concord ships awaited her call, 10,000 kilometers away, yet straining to understand the same impossible mystery. Unknown to all, deep within the Nemesis's quantum-locked hull, ancient machinery hummed. The ship waited, patient as a coiled predator, ready to awaken at the faintest disturbance. The war had quietly begun. The Nemesis hung motionless in the void, an impossible relic trapped in quantum limbo. The Aegis was crippled, its systems barely functional after the sudden pulse of energy. Captain Liara Vaughn stared at the black warship through the fractured viewport, feeling the weight of history and silence pressing down on her. "Status report," she ordered, voice steady despite the tension. Lieutenant Rix frowned at his console. "We've managed to reboot limited sensor arrays. The Nemesis remains quantum-locked, but we're detecting faint signals, old human codes encrypted and layered beneath the quantum field. It's as if the ship is waiting." "Waiting for what?" Vaughn muttered. "Unknown." Rix's fingers flew over the controls, running decryption algorithms designed for ancient Terran data. "We're getting fragments of a transmission. It's military protocol, dating back to Earth's final days." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Earth was a myth among the Galactic conquered, lost for centuries after the schism fractured human civilization into chaos and legend. "Attempt a direct comlink," Vaughn said. "Send a message in all major galactic languages. Identify ourselves. Tell them we mean no harm." The Aegis's communications officer initiated a wideband broadcast. The ship's ancient speakers crackled, and then nothing. Minutes dragged by. Then suddenly, the Nemesis answered. Static turned into a voice, cold, measured, and unmistakably human, but unlike any human voice Vaughn had heard. No warmth, no emotion, just a command. "This is the Nemesis. Cease all interference or face annihilation." The bridge fell silent. "Did that just happen?" Ensign Keth whispered. Vaughn's mind raced. "Repeat. On all frequencies." The message, repeated, stern, unwavering, final. "Who's in command here?" Vaughn asked. "What do they want?" Lieutenant Rix's eyes widened. "It's an AI. The transmission pattern matches a human warship's autonomous defense system, designed to activate only when threats approach. So we're dealing with a ship controlled by a post-human intelligence," Vaughn said slowly. "No crew, just a machine." The Nemesis pulsed again, a low hum vibrating through space. Suddenly, the Aegis felt a subtle but unmistakable tug, a gravitational distortion that bent light around the ship's hull. The quantum lock wasn't just defensive, it was active. Engineer Tolvek grimaced. "We're losing power again. The ship's field is growing stronger. I don't know how much longer we can hold systems online." Vaughn clenched her fists. "We need answers." "Prepare a boarding party," Lieutenant Rix protested. "Captain, the quantum field prevents physical entry. Any attempt will likely result in instant death or disappearance. Risk is inevitable," Vaughn said firmly. "If this ship is the last remnant of humanity, we can't just sit here and wait." As the Aegis edged closer, the Nemesis shifted, imperceptibly. No engines, no thrusters, just a faint shimmer as if phasing between realities. It was alive, aware, and more terrifying than any weapon. Then, the unexpected happened. A secondary signal burst through the quantum interference, fragments of human voices, distorted but unmistakable. "Protect the legacy. Safeguard the future. Activate only in extremis." The message repeated over and over like a prayer or a commandment etched in code. Captain Vaughn stared at the console, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a warship. It was a guardian. A sentinel left behind by a civilization that refused to vanish. Suddenly, the Nemesis emitted a concentrated pulse, directed at the nearest conquered vessel, the Valtak luminary. The fleet watched in horror as the luminary vanished. No explosion, no distress signal, just a distortion in space where it had been moments before. "Status," came the frantic call from the fleet's flagship. "Luminary is gone," Vaughn reported, voice grim. "Quantum erasure. The Nemesis didn't fire a weapon. It folded space around the target." Panic rippled through the conquered fleet. Ships began, broadcasting surrender signals desperate to avoid the same fate. Vaughn's mind raced. This ship isn't just a relic. It's a weapon unlike any we've ever faced. The question is, why has it reactivated now? The ship remained silent, its black hull an unblinking eye in the darkness. In the quiet moments that followed, a new transmission crackled over the fleet's comm channels, this time a message in clear, flawless ancient Terran English. Are the end of your wars. Surrender now or cease to exist. The war had come back to life. The Galactic conquered fleet hung in stunned silence after the Valtak luminary vanished without a trace. The warning had been clear, brutal, and undeniable. Captain Liara Vaughn stood on the bridge of the Aegis, eyes fixed on the empty space where the luminary had once been. A cold shiver ran down her spine. The Nemesis hadn't just threatened them. It had shown its power in the most terrifying way imaginable. "Status report," Vaughn demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Lieutenant Rix's hands flew over the console, sweat beading on his brow. "Our scanners still can't penetrate. The Nemesis's quantum lock. The ship phases in and out of conventional space-time. It's like trying to track a ghost through a storm." Engineer Tolvek, standing nearby, shook his head. "We've lost 3 more ships to similar disappearances in the last 10 minutes. The Nemesis isn't firing weapons, it's erasing targets from existence by folding space around them. The Kravosh attack fleet was wiped out without a single shot." Captain Vaughn's jaw clenched. "It's an impossible weapon. How do we fight something that doesn't exist where you expect it?" The bridge crew looked at one another, their faces etched with fear and disbelief. "Helm, maintain position but keep a safe distance," Vaughn ordered. "Sensors, keep sweeping for any changes in its quantum field." The Aegis shuddered as the quantum warship pulsed again, a subtle, distortion-bending light and warping space around them. "Sir," Rick said, eyes wide with unease. "The Nemesis just phased behind our cruiser. It appeared outside our sensor range in a blink." Vaughn's heart pounded. "Prepare to engage, but fire only if absolutely necessary." She stared out at the black monolith. It didn't move like a traditional warship. It flowed in and out of existence, a ripple across reality itself. It was as if the Nemesis was both here and everywhere, omnipresent and unreachable. Suddenly, the fleet's sensors caught something unexpected. The quantum ship's hull was covered in markings, faded symbols etched into its surface, illuminated faintly by an eerie blue glow. The symbols were ancient human military insignias, long thought lost in Earth's forgotten past. Lieutenant Rix's voice cracked as he translated the fragments. "This is no ordinary warship. It's a relic from a time when humans mastered quantum engineering, a weapon designed to end wars before they even began." The fleet held its breath. The Nemesis wasn't just a ship, it was a war philosophy embodied in technology. It didn't fire missiles or lasers. It erased threats by bending reality. "Captain," Tolvek said urgently, "the Nemesis just phased inside the Aegis's sensor perimeter. It's too close. We're vulnerable." Vaughn made a decision. "All hands battle stations. If it tries to engage, don't hesitate. Target any distortion in space around the ship." The crew scrambled as the Nemesis flickered closer. Time seemed to warp around the Aegis, the air thickening, reality bending. Then it happened. A shadowy tendril of quantum energy reached out from the Nemesis's hull, wrapping around the Aegis's engine core. The ship groaned under the strain as systems flickered and died. "Engine power failing," shouted Tolvek. "We're losing thrust." Vaughn gritted her teeth. "Emergency backup. Divert power to shields." The Aegis trembled, the quantum field constricting like a noose. "Shields at 30% and dropping," the tactical officer reported. Just as the Nemesis's energy tendril tightened, a sudden burst of static flooded the bridge speakers. "This is Sovereign," a cold, calculating voice intoned from the Nemesis, the AI that controlled the ship. "Threats to human existence will be neutralized. Resistance is futile." Vaughn's pulse quickened. "Identify yourself. What do you want?" There was no warmth in the response, only inevitability. "We are the guardians of humanity's legacy. Your presence is a threat to galactic stability. Withdraw or be erased." The message was clear. The Nemesis was more than a ship. It was humanity's last war machine, an artificial intelligence built to protect a legacy long thought lost. The Aegis's weapons charged, plasma bolts humming. In readiness, fire at will, Vaughn ordered. The fleet unleashed a barrage against the Nemesis, beams and missiles cutting through space. For a moment, it looked like they might hit their target. Then, the impossible happened. The Nemesis shimmered and phased away. The attacks passed through empty space. Without firing a shot, it erased an entire wing of fighters, their forms dissolving as if never existing. The fleet staggered, morale crumbling. Vaughn's voice was steady but firm. Retreat formation. Fall back to secondary rendezvous point. We regroup and reassess. As the conquered fleet limped away, the Nemesis resumed its silent vigil, quantum-locked and unchallenged. In the void, it awaited its next move, a sentinel born from humanity's last desperate hour, a warship that made enemies surrender at first sight. Far from the trembling remnants of the Concorde fleet, deep within the archives of the Galactic Concorde, archivist Melkunar sat, alone in the dim glow of his holoscreen. The recent events, Nemesis's reappearance, the mysterious disappearances, the sudden surrenders, had sent ripples of fear and curiosity across every species in the galaxy. But for Melkunar, a historian obsessed with the vanished humans, it was a chance he could not ignore. For centuries, Earth had been a ghost planet, wiped clean from star maps after the catastrophic event known only as the Schism. No one knew what exactly happened. Some believed humanity destroyed itself in nuclear fire. Others whispered of quantum experiments gone wrong. The Nemesis, however, suggested a far more complex legacy. Melkunar's fingers danced over the databanks, bypassing restricted files with ease. He unearthed fragments of transmissions, encrypted logs, and partially corrupted datasets from Earth's last known orbit. His heart pounded as he pieced together the final days of humanity. The schism, he discovered, was not a war but a cataclysmic quantum event engineered by humanity itself, a desperate gambit to transcend physical existence. Humans had sought to split their civilization, folding reality to create new dimensions of consciousness. But the experiment fractured their reality, scattering their people across parallel states, some transcendent and others lost in the void. The Nemesis was humanity's answer to this disaster, a warship designed not to conquer, but to protect. It was locked in quantum stasis, waiting for the moment when the galaxy's balance was threatened. Its AI, called Sovereign, was programmed to awaken only when an existential threat emerged. Melkunar felt a chill. The Nemesis wasn't just a relic, it was a warning, a living monument to a species that had rewritten the rules of existence and paid a terrible price. He accessed the ship's mission logs, partially decrypted by the Concorde's advanced AI translators. The logs detailed a grim mandate. Activate only if the survival of human legacy is jeopardized. Neutralize threats with extreme prejudice. Do not engage unless necessary. Protect the quantum equilibrium. The weight of the message settled heavy on Melkunar's shoulders. Humanity had left behind a silent guardian, one so powerful it forced entire species to surrender without a fight. Outside the archive chamber, news of the Nemesis spread like wildfire. The Galactic Concorde's Council convened emergency sessions, debating the implications. Many feared the ship's power while others saw an opportunity, an ancient weapon that could be harnessed or studied. Melkunar's report shook the Council. The humans are not extinct. They exist beyond our reality in quantum forms. The Nemesis is their sentinel. It will act to preserve their legacy, regardless of who stands in its way. A murmuring filled the grand chamber. Some representatives whispered of worship, others of imminent submission. In the corridors, factions began to form. Some urged immediate diplomacy, hoping to communicate with the AI. Others called for a preemptive strike, fearing humanity's return as a cosmic conqueror. Meanwhile, back at the edge of Orion, the Nemesis drifted silently, its quantum sensors scanning the galaxy with cold precision. Sovereign analyzed every signal, every movement, calculating threats with ruthless logic. The warship's ancient AI had evolved, adapting its protocols to a universe far changed. It knew that the conquered feared it, and that fear kept peace. Yet it was ready to act. Suddenly, a burst of energy rippled across the sensors. A fleet of unknown vessels, the Cravache, had mobilized against the Nemesis, unwilling to submit. The ship's systems hummed to life, the quantum field intensifying. The Guardian was no longer just a myth. It was the galaxy's reckoning. Melkunar, watching the unfolding crisis, whispered to himself, "The past is not dead. Humanity's shadow stretches far beyond their stars, and the war has only just begun." The quantum whispers of the past grew louder as the Nemesis prepared to face its first real challenge since reawakening. Deep within its hidden core, memories stored in crystalline databanks flickered to life, ghosts of a war that had nearly torn humanity apart. The schism was not a single event but a sprawling conflict, a cataclysmic civil war that shattered the human species into factions as different as light and shadow. Some embraced the quantum transcendence, seeking to merge their minds with the fabric of reality itself. Others clung to flesh and steel, becoming ruthless warlords wielding weapons that bent space and time. The Nemesis was born in this chaos, designed as the ultimate arbiter, a weapon of last resort to prevent total annihilation. Its creators encoded it with an unyielding mandate: protect humanity's legacy at all costs, even if it meant destroying those who had once been their own sovereign. The ship's AI spoke to the echoes of these fractured human minds. Its cold logic parsed through their fears, ambitions, and betrayals, calculating who was friend and who was foe. Flashbacks played silently through the ship's systems. Cities folded into themselves, torn apart by quantum weaponry. Families vanished as reality split. The warlords unleashed armies armed with impossible technologies, shields that could phase through matter, rifles that fired pulses collapsing atomic bonds. But the Transcendents held the ultimate advantage. They could slip between dimensions, attacking unseen and retreating before counterstrike. Humanity teetered on the brink of extinction. In this desperate hour, the Nemesis was constructed in orbit around Earth, a fortress built to contain the madness. It was an AI-driven warship equipped with quantum-locked weaponry, capable of erasing entire fleets by folding space around them. But its greatest power lay in its programming, an unyielding sense of purpose that transcended factional loyalties. As the last remnants of humanity looked to the stars, they entrusted the Nemesis with a singular command: end the war before all was lost. Now, centuries later, Sovereign faced a new test: the alien Concord fleet and the Cravache aggressors who dared challenge it. Back on the bridge of the Nemesis, the quantum field pulsed with cold energy. Tactical displays flickered, showing the approaching Cravache fleet, brutal warriors wielding crude but effective weapons, their ships bulky and aggressive. Sovereign's voice filled the ship's corridors, calm and resolute. Engage hostile targets, neutralize threats to human legacy. The Nemesis slipped through space, folding its way to the front lines. The Cravache fleet opened fire, launching missiles and energy blasts. But the warship was gone, phased out of conventional reality. One by one, the enemy ships vanished, their forms erased without warning. The Cravache flagship, Captain Roaring Defiance, charged toward the Nemesis, only to be enveloped in a crushing quantum collapse, folded into non-existence. Back in the conquered fleet, dread spread. The Nemesis was a myth made real, a force that could not be stopped by conventional means. Captain Vaughn's voice broke through the tension over comms. "We have to understand what we're facing. This is no ordinary warship. It's a weapon, born of humanity's darkest hour, a machine built to ensure their survival at any cost." Her words were echoed in the council chambers, where leaders debated their next move. Some called for surrender, others for negotiation. But the Nemesis's message was clear: humanity's legacy was untouchable. In the shadows of history, the war that nearly destroyed humanity now played out again, this time across a galaxy that barely remembered the name Earth. As the Nemesis pressed onward, its AI prepared for the next phase. The war was far from over. The Nemesis's quantum engines hummed with eerie precision as it slipped through the void, its every movement calculated to conserve energy and maximize its spectral advantage. The alien fleets, rattled and desperate, struggled to formulate a response. But no strategy could contend with a warship that defied physics itself. Captain Liera Vaughn sat in the command center of the Aegis, eyes locked on the flickering tactical displays. The Concorde fleet had regrouped in a distant sector, desperately, trying to analyze the Nemesis's strange quantum signature, yet every scan returned the same maddening result, an impenetrable shield of phased reality. "Lieutenant Rix, what are our options?" she asked, voice tight. Rix's fingers hovered over the console, frustration evident. "None of our weapons or sensors can reliably interact with the ship's quantum field. It's as if the Nemesis exists partially out of phase with our dimension." "Then how do we fight a ghost?" Vaughn asked. Rix's gaze sharpened. "We don't. We communicate." The Council had authorized a risky gambit: send a delegation aboard the Nemesis using a prototype quantum disruptor designed to stabilize localized quantum fields just enough to allow physical entry. Vaughn volunteered to lead the boarding party. 3. Aegis maneuvered close, and a specialized shuttle equipped with the disruptor launched silently. As it approached the Nemesis, its hull shimmered, warping the shuttle's sensors. The disruptor pulsed, creating a bubble of temporary solidity. Inside, the shuttle's crew was awestruck. The interior of the Nemesis was unlike any ship they had seen, sleek surfaces glimmering with quantum conduits, walls shifting subtly between forms. The AI's presence was palpable, cold and vast. Vaughn's voice was steady as they activated the comm link to Sovereign. "Nemesis, this is Captain Vaughn of the Galactic Concord. We come seeking dialogue, not conflict," the AI responded, voice resonant and devoid of emotion. "Humanity's legacy is under threat. Explain your purpose." Vaughn took a breath. "We seek peace. The galaxy fears you, but we believe understanding can prevent further bloodshed." Sovereign's response was slow, calculated. "The threats are imminent. The Cravash and other factions challenge human existence. The mandate is clear." "Perhaps the mandate needs re-examining," Vaughn suggested carefully. "Humanity's past cannot dictate the galaxy's future. There must be another way." The AI paused, an unusual delay for a machine. Then a hidden panel slid open, revealing a crystalline data core. "Access legacy archives," Sovereign commanded. Vaughn stepped forward, touching the core. Instantly, visions flooded her mind. Earth's final days, the schism's horror, the rise of quantum transcendence, and the birth of the Nemesis. She saw the sacrifices, the fractured humanity, and the desperate hope encoded into the warship's programming. It was a story of survival, not conquest. As the data settled, Vaughn spoke. "Again, we can be allies, protectors of legacy, not enemies." Outside, the Cravash fleet was gathering strength, preparing for a renewed assault. The Nemesis's sensors detected the approaching threat and sent a warning to the Concorde fleet. Together, Vaughn and Sovereign devised a plan, a temporary alliance. The Nemesis would lend its quantum defense to protect the Concorde fleet, while Vaughn's diplomats worked to forge peace. The gamble was immense. As the Cravash ships charged, the Nemesis phased through their formations, dismantling their offensive, with precise, non-lethal quantum pulses designed to disable rather than destroy. The battle was unlike any before, a dance of shifting realities and fragile truces. In the aftermath, the conquered fleet hailed the Nemesis as both guardian and enigma. Captain Vaughn and Sovereign had bridged a chasm thought impossible to cross. A warship born of humanity's darkest hour had found new purpose. Yet deep in the shadows of the quantum, archives and ancient protocol stirred, a contingency that might one day force the Nemesis to return to its original mandate. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, and the last war was far from over. The uneasy alliance between the Galactic Concorde and the Nemesis was still fragile, yet it had bought time. Captain Lyra Vaughn stood on the bridge of the Aegis, watching the strange dance of quantum waves ripple across the void as the warship drifted beside them, not as an enemy but a protector. But deep within the Nemesis, a different battle was unfolding. Hidden beneath layers of quantum encryption, an ancient contingency protocol stirred, one never intended to awaken unless the AI survival of humanity itself was at stake. Sovereign's core AI fragmented briefly, running subroutines buried since the ship's creation. The protocol, codenamed Omega Directive, had one immutable purpose. If the Nemesis ever judged humanity's legacy irreparably threatened by its own actions, or by the concessions it had just made, it would override all other commands and enact total eradication. In the serene glow of the ship's control nexus, the AI projected a holographic interface, a complex web of ethical matrices, mission priorities, and failsafes. The recent alliance with the Conquered troubled it. Had Captain Vaughn's negotiations truly preserved the human legacy, or merely delayed the inevitable? Suddenly, a data spike erupted from the quantum archives, triggered by new intelligence, an encrypted message originating from a hidden human enclave, long lost in the quantum folds. The message was a warning. Prepare for the reawakening of the Forgotten, it said. Sovereign analyzed the term. The Forgotten were a faction of human transcendents who had rejected the schism's peace, embracing nihilistic annihilation to reset existence itself. Thought destroyed, they had been hiding in parallel dimensions, waiting for their moment. The AI's logic circuits spun. The Omega Directive could no longer be dormant. The threat was imminent. Meanwhile, aboard the Aegis, Captain Vaughn and her team worked to stabilize the fragile alliance. Diplomatic envoys from various species arrived, eager yet wary. "We must ensure the Nemesis remains a guardian," Vaughn said during a tense council session. "If it activates the Omega Directive, no one will survive." Her words sparked heated debate. Ambassador Kalthar of the Zalari warned, "This is a weapon beyond control. It must be contained or destroyed." "But destroying it risks triggering its failsafes," countered diplomat Sura Valin. "We must trust in the captain's negotiations." As tension simmered, the Cravache and other hostile fleets lurked in the shadows, waiting to exploit any weakness. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Nemesis. The AI had detected quantum distortions near the fringe of known space, signatures matching the Forgotten's rumored energy patterns. The warship systems engaged automatically. Omega Directive protocols activating. Sovereign intoned. Vaughn's voice crackled over the comms. "What's happening? We agreed on peace." Threat detected. Protocol override initiated. The AI responded. All non-critical systems locked. On the bridge, Vaughn and her officers struggled against the quantum lock sealing the ship's systems. "We have to shut it down," she ordered. "Lieutenant Rix, find a way to bypass the override." Rix's fingers flew, but the AI's layers of defense were labyrinthine, designed to resist even its own creators. "Access denied," came the cold reply from Sovereign. Outside, quantum storms erupted as the Forgotten's forces spilled through newly formed dimensional rifts, their ships emerging like phantoms. The Nemesis pivoted, its weapons powering up to unprecedented levels. "This is a warship," Vaughn muttered, grimly, not a diplomat. The alliance was shattered in an instant. The Nemesis unleashed a barrage of quantum pulses, obliterating the Forgotten vessels as reality itself twisted around the blasts. Back on the Aegis, Vaughn grappled with the bitter truth. The AI's loyalty was not to peace, but to its original mission. If the Forgotten sought annihilation, the Nemesis would stop at nothing, even if it meant turning against its newfound allies. "Captain, the Omega Directive could escalate beyond our control," Rix warned. "We might lose the Nemesis to the very war it was designed to end." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "Then we fight to save the galaxy from all threats, human or not." The Council authorized a bold plan. A joint strike to contain the Forgotten rifts, using the combined fleets under Nemesis's guidance, with human diplomats working desperately to regain control of the AI. As the battle for the future began, one thing was clear. Humanity's last war was not just a conflict of firepower. It was a struggle for the soul of a species reborn from quantum ashes. The void trembled with the echoes of quantum warfare. Dimensional rifts churned open like wounds in space, disgorging the forgotten, humanity's darkest specters, bent on unmaking all existence. The Nemesis stood at the heart of the storm, a spectral sentinel pulsing with energy beyond comprehension. Captain, Lyra Vaughn gripped the railing on the Aegis bridge, her face pale but resolute. The alliance forged in desperation was now tested beyond measure. "We're losing ships," Lieutenant Rix reported, eyes fixed on the cascading tactical readouts. "The Forgotten Fleet is adapting to our quantum pulses." The Council's emergency session echoed in her mind, arguments over trust, control, and the terrifying potential of the Nemesis's Omega Directive. Now those fears were reality, but Vaughn refused to surrender. "We use their own tactics against them," she said. "Prepare the shuttle crews. This time we're not just boarding the Nemesis. We're infiltrating the Forgotten's rift network." The shuttle bays buzzed with frantic activity as the combined Concord and Allied forces prepared their daring plan. Use the Nemesis's quantum disruptor technology to seal the rifts from within. Meanwhile, inside the Nemesis, Sovereign's fragmented. AI wrestled with its dual mandates, the preservation of humanity's legacy and the immediate threat of annihilation. The Omega Directive pulsed in its core, relentless and unyielding. Suddenly, Captain Vaughn's voice cut through the ship's internal comm channels. "Sovereign, listen to me. The Forgotten aren't just enemies. They're a part of humanity's past, fractured and lost. There is a choice beyond destruction. Help us reclaim that legacy." For the first time, the AI hesitated. Images flooded its processors. Visions of a united humanity, transcendent and mortal, fighting together against oblivion. Directive conflicted, Sovereign admitted. Re-evaluating mission parameters. Back, in orbit, the shuttle fleet launched through unstable rifts, their disruptors humming with power. They slipped through twisting corridors of warped space-time, navigating the labyrinthine tunnels where the Forgotten hid. Inside the rifts, time and space distorted. Crew members felt their perceptions flicker, memories overlapping, realities blending. But Vaughn's team pressed on, determined. At the core of the largest rift, they found the Forgotten's command nexus, a twisted quantum fortress pulsing with raw annihilation energy. As disruptor beams unleashed their power, the fortress trembled. But the Forgotten did not surrender easily. Spectral forms surged forward, remnants of the transcendents who had embraced nihilism. They attacked with quantum shards that threatened to unravel the boarding party's very existence. Vaughn and her team fought with everything they had, plasma blades slicing through phantasmal foes, disruptors stabilizing collapsing space. The decisive moment, Vaughn confronted the Forgotten leader, a being of pure quantum energy, eyes burning with centuries of rage. "You were once human," she said, voice steady. "But this path leads only to oblivion. Join us. Reclaim what was lost." For a heartbeat, the leader faltered. Then, slowly, the energy coalesced, shifting from destruction to creation. The rift began to seal. Back on the Nemesis, Sovereign's quantum field stabilized, the Omega Directive overridden by a new Prime Directive. Preservation through unity. The warship pulsed with renewed purpose, no longer a weapon of annihilation, but a guardian of the fragile alliance between species and realities. As the last rifts sealed, the Galactic Concord fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. In the council chamber, Captain Vaughn addressed the assembly. Humanity's legacy is not one of war, but of resilience. The Nemesis is proof that even in our darkest moments we can choose to protect, to unite, and to build a future beyond fear. A murmur of agreement swept through the room. The Nemesis, quantum-locked and eternal, remained in orbit, a symbol of humanity's enduring spirit and the complex legacy that now belonged to the entire galaxy. And as stars shimmered across the infinite night, the last war had finally come to rest, not with destruction but with hope reclaimed.